Joe Biden refers to Xi Jinping as a dictator. An aircraft searching for a missing submersible in the North Atlantic detects underwater sounds. And the government is looking into cross-border clearing arrangements for Chong Street visitors in Shuttlecock. Good evening and welcome to TVB News. U.S. President Joe Biden has referred to President Xi Jinping as a dictator. China has hit back. The Foreign Ministry in Beijing has called the remarks absurd and a provocation in an unexpected spat immediately following efforts by both sides to lower tensions. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Attending a fundraiser in California, U.S. President Joe Biden said President Xi was very embarrassed when a suspected Chinese spy balloon was blown off course of U.S. airspace earlier this year. Biden said that's a great embarrassment for dictators when they didn't know what happened, that wasn't supposed to be going where it was blown off course. The U.S. president also said China has real economic difficulties. Biden's comments came after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and President Xi agreed in their meeting on Monday in Beijing to stabilize the intense rivalry between the U.S. and China so it did not veer into conflict. While no breakthroughs were made during the first visit to China by U.S. Secretary of State for 5 years, both sides did agree to continue diplomatic engagement with more visits by U.S. officials in the coming weeks and months. Prior to his controversial comments, Biden himself said he thought relations between the U.S. and China were on the right path, while indicating progress was made during Blinken's trip. The Chinese Foreign Ministry hit back at Biden, referring to President Xi as a dictator. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said the U.S. remarks are extremely absurd and irresponsible, go totally against facts and seriously violate diplomatic protocol and severely infringe on China's political dignity. Mao added it is a blatant political provocation. China expresses strong dissatisfaction and opposition. She also addressed Biden's statement that President Xi was embarrassed about the recent tensions around an alleged Chinese spy balloon that's been blown off course over the U.S. In response, Mao once again insisted that the incident was completely an accidental event caused by force majeure. She said the U.S. should have handled it in a calm and professional manner. However, the U.S. distorted facts and used forces to hype up the incident, fully revealing its nature of bullying and hegemony. Daniel Rao, TVB News.
U.S. President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has agreed to plead guilty to 2 misdemeanor charges of willfully failing to pay income taxes. Hunter Biden has also agreed to enter into an agreement that could avert a conviction on a gun-related charge. The news sparked accusations of favorable treatment for the Democratic president's son from former President Donald Trump and his Republican allies. Daniel Rao again.
U.S. President Joe Biden's son, Hunter, will plead guilty to federal tax offenses but avoid full prosecution on a separate gun charge in a deal with the Justice Department that likely spares him time behind bars. 53-year-old Hunter Biden will plead guilty to the misdemeanor tax offenses as part of an agreement made public on Tuesday. The agreement will also avert prosecution on a felony charge of illegally possessing a firearm as a drug user. That's as long as he adheres to conditions agreed to in court. The deal ends a long-running Justice Department investigation into the taxes and foreign business dealings of President Biden's second son, who is acknowledged struggling with addiction following the 2015 death of his brother Beau Biden. It also averts a trial that would have generated days or weeks of distracting headlines for the White House. The president, when asked about the development, said simply he was very proud of his son. Former President Donald Trump and other Republicans continue to try to use the case to shine an unflattering spotlight on Joe Biden. Trump, who is challenging President Biden in the 2024 presidential race, likened the agreement to a mere traffic ticket. The agreement comes as the Justice Department pursues perhaps the most consequential case in its history against Trump, the first former president to face federal criminal charges. This in relation to accusations of mishandling classified documents on his Florida estate. An analyst says Hunter Biden's court proceedings could affect his father's bid to remain in the White House.
Hunter Biden is no different from thousands and thousands of Americans who are accused of not paying their taxes properly. I don't think that's a charge that really can stick that well in a campaign season. It would be beyond hypocritical for President Biden to suggest that the law should not be used to its fullest extent against somebody who lied on an application to get a gun.
Dunwell, TVB News.
A Canadian military surveillance aircraft detected underwater sounds earlier today while scanning the North Atlantic for a tourist submersible that vanished with 5 people on board. The submersible was on a deep-sea voyage to the century-old wreck of the Titanic when authorities lost communication with the vessel early Sunday and reported it overdue later that night. Tracy Furness has more.
Rescuers have been racing against the clock to find the carbon fibre submersible that disappeared Sunday with only a 4-day supply of oxygen on board.
Over the night, we flew multiple sorties, or over the last 24 hours, we've flown multiple aircraft over the site looking for any signs of surfacing of the submersible. The area that we search is roughly about the size of Connecticut. As we continue on with the search, we're expanding our capabilities to be able to search under the water as well.
1 pilot and 4 passengers were inside the miniature sub Titan when it disappeared. The expedition was led by OceanGate, making its 3rd voyage to the Titanic, with founder Stockton Rush piloting the vessel. He founded the company to provide crewed submersibles for undersea research and exploration. British billionaire and a world record-holding adventurer Hamish Harding is also on board, as are father and son Shahzada and Solomon Dawood, members of one of Pakistan's most prominent families, and Titanic expert and former French Navy officer Paul-Henri Nargeolet. New ships joined the search Tuesday. The marine traffic shows 7 vessels scouring the North Atlantic, but experts say finding the submersible is difficult.
A needle in a haystack. First, when you are above the surface, we can use GPS, we can use radar, we can use radio. There is nothing like that we can use below the sea because, simply put, the electromagnetic frequencies, the electromagnetic waves do not propagate far undersea. So you can only rely on acoustic sensors to try to communicate and be aware of your environment.
The US Coast Guard tweeted that Canadian aircraft did detect underwater noises, but searches yielded negative results. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Back locally, the Hong Kong government is planning to open up Sha-Tao-Kok in phases for development and cultural tourism. Today, Chief Executive John Lee said the government is looking into ways to introduce cross-border clearance arrangements along Chong Street, which remains in the frontier closed area. Jackie Lin with details.
Straddling along the border, Chong Street has been designated as part of the frontier closed area in Sha-Tao-Kok before the handover, and is only accessible to individuals with closed area permits. In Chief Executive John Lee's policy address last October, the city leader looks set to open up Sha-Tao-Kok in phases and promote the cultural tourism and nature trails there starting in 2024. But some sections of the border town are not included, such as Chong Street. In interviews with Ta Kung Pao and Wen Wei Po, the CE said Chong Street has no cross-border clearance facilities, so it has remained off-limits. But he said modern technology has offered more possibilities to develop the restricted zone, and the government has instructed the Security Bureau and the Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau to study clearance arrangements that are in line with both Hong Kong and mainland laws. Sha-Tao-Kok District Rural Committee Chairman Lee Kun-hong said it is possible for visitors to enter Chong Street without applying for closed area permits.
I believe the government is deterring the clearance method that allow Hong Kongers to enter and exit through one checkpoint while mainland tourists go in and go out through another checkpoint to Chong Street. That may be easier for management.
And opening up the street would increase the overall appeal of Sha-Tao-Kok.
Opening up Chong Street would make Sha-Tao-Kok much more attractive, especially on its interesting history.
Chong Ying Street literally means Sino-British Street. The name itself is a mark of Hong Kong history, tracing back to 1898. The village marked the line that the British side expanded its Hong Kong territory through a 99-year lease on the new territories. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
In the same interview with the two newspapers, Chief Executive John Lee also weighed in on the city's housing problems. He said the administration will continue to study different ways to relocate all those living in unfit premises to transitional or light public housing. He also pointed out that not all subdivided flats are inappropriate living premises, and the work to define the term will have to be fully deliberated and consulted all social sectors. He added the government aims to prioritize public housing applications from those who have been waiting for 3 years or more. Currently, the waiting time for public housing stands at 5.3 years. That's shorter than 6.1 years when Lee first took office. The CE said the public housing waiting time target remains at 4.5 years. The MTR Corporation is injecting over $65 billion over the next 5 years to enhance railway maintenance. This after the rail operator completed a thorough assessment of its maintenance and asset management practices. Veronica Lin reports.
Last year, blunders involving trains and compartments occurred at Yau Ma Tei Station and the Chung Kung No Line. The MTRC later commissioned an expert panel to conduct a comprehensive assessment on maintenance and asset management. And half a year later, it has recommended 5 action areas in which the rail giant can enhance its regime. In terms of maintenance, the panel suggested MTRC accelerate the application of innovation and technology in railway services and asset management. That includes a pilot launch for the South Island line in November this year and a rollout to other lines in the third quarter of next year. The MTRC will also fight for longer maintenance time during traffic hours. Train schedules will not be affected in the short run. The manpower shortage in maintenance for the company reached 11% last year, but the rail giant will be undertaking more new construction projects in the future. To attract more manpower, the MTR Corp plans to introduce a 4-hour workday option, allowing employees to have a more flexible schedule. The MTR promised to invest $65 billion on railway maintenance and renewal over the next 5 years.
From our daily income, from our operations, including fare and non-fare, as well as from our property. So all those income will be funding this $65 billion. And they will not be transferred to the passengers in terms of the increase because our fare is governed by our fare adjustment mechanism.
Meanwhile, Secretary for Transport and Logistics Lam Se-hung said, so far, there's no need to import foreign labor to help ease the MTR's frontline manpower shortage. He added they will decide on a case-by-case basis on whether the rail operator should shorten rail service hours to improve maintenance. Veronica Lin, TVB News.
Still to come on tonight's news. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives in the US for a 4-day visit. Locally, 11 people arrested in a crackdown on illegal fuel filling stations. And a plan to improve street cleaning services by trying out hydrogen fuel cell vehicles that are being used on the mainland. Welcome back to TVB News. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi held private meetings with business and thought leaders in New York on Tuesday at the start of his state visit to the United States. He held talks with Tesla founder Elon Musk and is due to have a private dinner with U.S. President Joe Biden. The U.S. is keen to strengthen relations with India, even amid human rights concerns and the country's implicit support for Russia. Nazvi Karim has more.
Yoga is India's most influential export, boosted by the marking of International Day of Yoga on Wednesday, an annual event given life by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Modi will celebrate the occasion in New York before heading to Washington, where the serenity espoused by the ancient practice faces a number of tests. A private dinner with U.S. President Joe Biden will be followed by talks at the White House and a state dinner on Thursday. Dozens of Biden's fellow Democrats have urged the president to confront Modi on India's human rights record. Modi has faced criticism over laws that fast-track citizenship for some migrants but excludes Muslims, as well as a rise in violence against Muslims and other religious groups by Hindu nationalists. Biden is also uneasy about India's refusal to condemn Russia over the invasion of Ukraine, with Delhi continuing to buy cheap oil from Moscow. However, Biden cannot afford to antagonize India too much, with the US seeing the world's most populous country as a potential counter to China's growing global influence. Indeed, Washington is putting Modi on a pedestal for this trip. Though he has visited the US several times in the past, this is his first full state visit, and only the third to the US by an Indian leader. Both Biden and Modi will largely focus on business, with the Indian Prime Minister already holding talks with Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX and owner of social media platform Twitter. Musk has been in talks with the Indian government about building an electric vehicle base in India. Biden will also be looking to expand defense and high-tech cooperation with India, which could obtain rare access to key US technologies that Washington rarely shares with non-allies. Modi's personal relationship with Biden also appears to be strengthening. He shared a close bond with former President Donald Trump, who held mass rallies with Modi in the United States and in cities in India during his presidency. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
3 men have been convicted of various charges in a U.S. federal court trial showcasing claims that China has engineered pressure campaigns on American soil to bully expatriates into returning home. The trio are allegedly linked to an effort called Operation Fox Hunt. Former New York City Police Sergeant Michael McMahon and 2 Chinese citizens living in the U.S. were accused of taking part in scare tactics aimed at a former Chinese official. The official was living quietly in New Jersey and Beijing wanted him back. Zhu Yong was convicted of acting as an illegal foreign agent, stalking, interstate stalking conspiracy, and conspiring to act as an illegal foreign agent. Ying was convicted of stalking and stalking conspiracy, but acquitted of the other charges. McMahon was convicted of all except conspiracy to act as a foreign agent. The case was the first of several involving alleged fox hunt schemes to reach trial in the U.S. Beijing has denied trying to force repatriations through intimidation. The Chinese embassy in Washington has said the defendants are not Chinese law enforcement agents, adding that the charges were slanderous or based on rumor. Here in Hong Kong, authorities arrested 11 people and seized 75,000 kilos of diesel fuel in their latest operation to combat illegal fuel filling stations. Officers intercepted multiple fuel tank trucks, with some of them connected to a fuel tube. Custom officers found that the illegal stations were charging $10 less per kilo compared to the market price. The Fire Services Department discovered that some people were running these illegal stations in Tin Shui Wai. Officers from several disciplinary forces yesterday smashed 2 such stations in Tin Shui Wai and seized 50,000 kilos of diesel fuel. Similar operations also took place in Changsha Wan and Qingyi. An alligator snapping turtle paid a surprise visit to a group of construction workers in Sanpo Kong today. It was found trapped on a canopy scaffolding outside an industrial building under renovation. The turtle is 1 meter long and half a meter wide. Construction workers dragged it onto the floor with a rope. The reptile appears to be fine and without injuries. Still, pet shelter and government workers brought the animal back for a body check. But questions remain on whether it is someone's pet and how it got there in broad daylight. The government is planning to try out hydrogen fuel cell street cleaning vehicles next year. Sources say the government is inclined to introduce the type of vehicles being used on the mainland and try them out in the new territories.
Traditional street cleaning vehicles are powered by diesel fuel. Earlier, the government approved multiple hydrogen energy trial projects, including heavy vehicles powered by hydrogen. Sources say the administration noticed that environmentally friendly electric vehicles are getting common in Hong Kong.
That prompted the idea of bringing in hydrogen-powered street cleaning vehicles, which have been in use on the mainland. With China Petroleum's bid to build a hydrogen refueling station at Ngao Tau in Yuen Long, 3 such vehicles will go on trial in the new territories. Lawrence Chong, Chief Innovation Officer of the Hong Kong Productivity Council, noted the city has narrow roads and lots of slopes. So, the vehicle's hydrogen fuel cells need to be adjusted before they can be put to use. Currently, electric cars have a driving range of about 200 kilometers after 3 to 4 hours of battery charge. Unlike private vehicles, driving a street cleaning vehicle requires the drivers to go slow and the motor to keep going. Chong said when it comes to hydrogen leakage, the molecules will disperse quickly because it's very light, thus the threat posed by a leak is not high. He added that for top-class hydrogen tanks, they will not explode even if they are hit by bullets. He said whether hydrogen cars can become popular in the city will depend on fuel costs and the retail prices. And that's the news. Thanks for joining us.